Hello, and welcome to this Easy Spreadsheets for Life video tutorial. In this video, I will explain everything you need to know to get started with your new spreadsheet. This tutorial applies to our Easy Bookkeeping spreadsheet, which includes 11 tabs: Instructions, Setup, Income, Expenses, Adjust, Balance, Monthly, Annual, 5-year, Sales Tax, and Balance Sheet. So in this video, I will go over each tab in detail. First, we'll start with this Instructions tab. At the top, there are links for contacting us, the frequently asked questions page on our website, this video tutorial, and also a link to the tips and tricks page on our site. Below the buttons is an important Read First section. We highly recommend making a copy of your spreadsheet before you enter any data. This will give you an unused original version that you can copy from if you ever happen to delete or break any formulas. If you don't make a copy or you can't find the copy you made, you can always go back to your Etsy account and download the file again. As we scroll down, you'll find a basic tutorial on how to get started with your new spreadsheet. If you're familiar with Google Sheets and you feel comfortable jumping right in, then this page is probably all you'll need to get up and running. Okay, next is the Setup tab. This is where you'll enter information that will auto-populate other tabs in the spreadsheet. So the first thing I want to mention is that throughout your spreadsheet, you'll see that there are colored cells, such as right here, and then there are just white cells. So the colored cells have formulas or text in them and should not be edited. The white cells are where you will make your entries. But don't worry about accidentally deleting or editing a formula cell because the spreadsheets are protected, and if you type into a colored cell, you'll see a warning message that will either allow you to back out or move forward with editing the cell. For example, I get the message I could just hit cancel. The second thing I need to mention is choosing your accounting period. In the spreadsheet, you can choose between a calendar year, which is January 1st to December 31st, or a fiscal year end, which is basically an accounting period that ends on the last day of any month except December. So a calendar year is always referred to by the actual year. So calendar year 2024 takes place only in the year 2024. The fiscal year end refers to the year at the end of the annual period. So fiscal year end 2025 would start in 2024 and end in 2025. So here, if you select January, the spreadsheet will automatically update all the tabs for a calendar year. If you select any month besides January, the spreadsheet will update all tabs for a fiscal year, which again is referred to throughout the spreadsheet by the year that ends the accounting period. So here I've selected January as the starting month, and the year is the actual current year, which is 2024. Now, if I go over to the profit goals table, I see that the first year here starts at 2024. However, if I go back and select any month except January, I'll choose March, I can go back to the profit goals table and now see the first year in the table is 2025 because it's referring to the fiscal year end. This first month listed here is the current year, and then this very last month is in the following year. So the accounting period you choose just depends on your business patterns and accounting needs. So if you use a calendar year in your business accounting, then you would choose January here. If your accounting period ends in, for example, June 30th, then you would select July as your starting month and select the current year. For this example, I'm going to select March, and the year is 2024, and my preferred currency is going to be the dollar. Then just below, you'll enter your income sources, expense categories, and financial accounts, along with the starting balance for each. Then over here to the right is the annual profit goals table, where you can set up your annual profit goals over 5 years. Simply enter your annual profit goal for each month and year in these white columns. Just underneath that table is a section to outline business goals. This section is not synced with anything in the spreadsheet. It's just a place for you to type out some long-term goals. And then just below that is a short box for notes. So I'm going to go ahead and make some entries in this tab so we have some data to work with. Okay, once you have your Setup tab complete, let's move on to the Income tab. Here in the Income tab, you'll record all deposits to your various accounts listed in the Setup tab. You would simply enter the date of the deposit, the transaction ID. You would select from the income source that you listed in the Setup tab. You would enter the gross amount of the transaction, then any taxes, fees, shipping. The table will calculate the net amount for you, and then you would select which account you're depositing into. And then at the end, you optionally have space for a description and a note. So I'm going to add a few entries here. Next, we have the Expenses tab, where, of course, you'll record all expenses being withdrawn from your accounts. And very similar in setup to the Income tab. The only difference is instead of selecting an income source, you'll select from this list of expense categories that you listed in the Setup tab. So I'll go ahead and make a few transactions. Okay, the next tab is the Adjust tab, where you can make any adjustments or transfers with your accounts. In the Adjustments table, you would simply enter the date of the adjustment. And then you would choose the type, whether it's a credit to an account or a debit from an account. Then select the account and the amount. You can also do that for a debit. So you can see credits show up in a pale green background and debits or withdrawals are in this pale red. And you don't need to enter a minus sign if it is a negative number, such as this 50. The spreadsheet will do that calculation for you based on the type of adjustment you chose over here. And then on the end, you have the option to enter a description. Now, looking just to the right, we have the Transfers table, when you need to make any transfers between any two accounts listed in the Setup tab. So just enter the transfer date, the account the transfer is coming from, and then the account the transfer is going to, and the amount. And then optionally a description here on the end. All of these transactions between the Income, Expenses, and Adjust tabs will all be calculated into the current balances of each account listed in the Setup tab. And you can check those balances in the Balance tab. So let's go there next. The Balance tab has two main features. The first is the balance details of all accounts in the Setup tab. These details include the current balance, the starting balance, which comes from the Setup tab, the total amount of deposits, the total amount of withdrawals, adjustments, and transfers. So again, anytime you want to know the current balance to any of your accounts, you would just come to this Balance tab and look here in this current column. The second main feature of this tab is the Balance by Date table, here to the right. In this table, you can select any account listed from the Setup tab, such as here, and then you would enter two dates, a from date and then an end date or a to date. And the table will calculate the starting balance at the beginning of the from date. Then it will give you the total amount of deposits, withdrawals, adjustments, and transfers between the two dates. And then it will give you the balance at the end of the to date. This table is very helpful when you only want to review a certain account in a certain time period. It allows you to find those details quickly without reviewing a long list of transactions. All right, next let's go to the monthly tab. The monthly tab is a dashboard that presents a variety of data for a specific month and year. So you would just enter the month and year that you want to review up here in the overview table. Make sure you're entering a time period that you actually have data for. For example, my starting month was March of 2024, so I wouldn't choose January because there's no data for January. In this example, I'm going to choose March and the year 2024. So the spreadsheet will then generate several graphs as well as calculate these tables here in the middle to give you your top 10 net income sources, net expense categories, and account balances. And then scrolling down a little further, we see a couple of tables that give you an overview of your income and expenses for the selected month. So this is just a great tool to use to get an overall view of any month as a whole. All right, let's look at the annual table. The annual table is similar to the monthly table, except that it gives you an overall view for an entire year. So you would just select the year up here. Again, I'm going to choose 2025 because we're in fiscal year end 2025. The spreadsheet will generate several graphs that you can review, as well as a month-by-month table here in the middle, and then summaries and breakdowns as we scroll down. So I just want to point out that this bar graph here is a toggle graph, and you can switch between your top 10 account balances, income sources, and expense categories. Okay, let's move on to the 5-year tab. The 5-year tab gives you a high-level view over a 5-year span, which are the 5 years listed in the annual profit goals table in the Setup tab. You can review several graphs, summaries, and totals. There are a couple of toggle graphs on this tab. So here you can select over 5 years your top 10 expense categories, income sources, and account balances. And then over here, you can choose to see the progress of any of your yearly goals. At the bottom, you'll find totals for every income and expense subcategory for each of the 5 years. And as you can see, there are no white cells on this tab, so nothing that requires your input. All the data on this tab is automatically updated based on your entries in the other tabs. Okay, the next tab is sales tax. This tab tracks your sales tax, fees, and shipping costs. You only need to enter the accounting year up here in the top left. Everything else is automated. So you can just review totals for each category down here in these tables. And of course, there are graphs to give you a visual representation of the breakdown. Okay, last tab is the balance sheet. This tab is completely independent of the other tabs, except for the currency symbol that you added in the Setup tab. So you have a few important financial ratios up here at the top, which are automated based on your entries in these tables below. What you would do is list your assets and liabilities according to their category, and then add their amounts or values for each year across the rows. So I'll add a few entries so you can see how it works. So each table will calculate the totals for you and then use those totals to generate the ratios up here at the top. Then over here to the right, you have the option to print off a balance sheet. And we've just added some simple instructions up here at the top to generate the balance sheet for a specific year and then how to print. Just select the year up here. I'm going to choose 2025, and the balance sheet will generate based on that year. So all you have to do is select the year, change this to your business name, and then print it. And that is the end of this video tutorial. If you still have any questions, you can go back to the Instructions tab and choose one of the links here up at the top. There's a few different ways you can find additional support, including the FAQ page and tips and tricks page on our website, as well as contacting us directly through our Etsy shop. Thank you again for choosing Easy Spreadsheets for Life, and I wish you all the best in your business goals.